Welcome to the In Focus. Now, through a tweet, the Ministry of Education noted that since 2009 in pre-primary, from primary 1 to primary 3, Kinyarwanda is, by policy, a medium of instruction, while English is taught as a subject. Early literacy, learning other languages are best attained while taught in mother language. I'm reading the tweet. English language is a medium of instruction from upper primary up to tertiary education, P4 to university. French language is taught from primary 4 to primary 6 and S1 to S3 for those with language combination, taught up to S6. This is similar to Kiswahili. According to the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, it is through the mastery of the first language or mother tongue that the basic skills of reading, writing and numeracy are acquired. However, some schools in the country have not complied with the ministerial instruction of using Kinyarwanda as a language of instruction in primary 1 through primary 3. Mineduc says that they are closely monitoring the implementation of this new policy through inspections of in-class teaching, lessons preparations to promote national value, and will hold accountable those who go against national curriculum implementations. Tonight, we examine why there is little compliance to the use of Kinyarwanda as a language of instruction in the lower primary and why this means as using Kinyarwanda as a medium of instruction in schools. Welcome to the In Focus, and I have the pleasure to introduce my panelists. Earlier on, I had mentioned that the Minister of Education was supposed to join us, and he indeed wanted to join us, but unfortunately, he sent me a message earlier, later this evening, that he had lost an auntie, and we want to join him and his family in, consoling with them, and of course, we send our condolences. But of course, we have the pleasure to be joined by Dr. Irene Ndayambaje, who is the Director General of Rwanda Education Board, who also is the implementer of this very, very policy. I'm also joined by, Dr. Albert Rudasingwa, who is a journalist, who is an artist, who is so much passionate about Kinyarwanda. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I have, pleasure to be joined by a very good friend of mine, Matthew Wahiji, who is a, communication analyst and also so much passionate about this topic. As a parent, I hope your kids go to one of these schools. That
we'll talk about that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us here tonight. Yeah. And let me probably begin with you, Dr. Irene. Why is there little compliance in the implementation of this policy in schools?
Thank you for the invitation and the floor. I would first of all start by emphasizing what you said. In actual fact, 10 years ago, that's when the policy was adopted. But when you go in the media and the public, it's like it's something that has come yesterday. So 10 years.
That's actually a good question.
Yes.
Why is it coming back?
Yes. You mentioned actually some of the reason why this come as a fresh news.
Yeah.
Always, wherever you go, people are talking about it. But it's because actually the Minister of Education has now gone to the schools to see what is happening. You mentioned the Educational Quotidianist campaign. You mentioned also what we call the in-class inspections, but also they recently approved the cabinet decision about comprehensive assessment, whereby actually there will be national assessment from P1 upwards. So meaning that those schools now that have been not following the rules are now saying, now we are going to be discovered. So it's like now they are like saying what is going to happen. So all these actually enforcing mechanisms have now actually awakened the public, but also those schools that have not been actually abiding with the decision which was taken 10 years ago. So that is actually our guess. But what we have to underline is that one, we have a policy in place. And when you are running a private school which is using what we call a national curriculum, actually you should embrace it entirely, not partially. So the exception actually should come for the international schools, but also when it comes to international schools, they have to teach also Kinyarwanda as a subject. So that is actually what I can say. We shall go further in the development.
Interesting. Quite a number of questions, especially coming from I was reading through our tweets, and we'll get there. So keep sending those questions. Our Twitter, rather, the hashtag is the InFocusRW, and we'll be reading them live here. But let me go to you, sir, Albert.
Yes.
You've been so much pushing, you've been for this policy, and one wonders why, in this time and age where Rwanda is positioning ourselves as a regional hub, as a global hub, why should we emphasize Kinyarwanda when we are actually, like becoming sort of a gateway for Africa and like a hub in countries?
For the sake of clarity, because even I was misguided from the initial discussion. So our system is like that. Our system is there that actually your primary education is in Kinyarwanda. Is it or not?
Yeah.
No, pre-primary until
In actual fact, maybe to clarify on that point,
Because
the medium of instruction is Kinyarwanda for nursery or pre-primary and the lower primary education. So from P4, which is upper primary upwards, the medium of instruction becomes English. So in actual fact, as you are saying, you was misled by the title, which is saying Kinyarwanda throughout the schools. But Kinyarwanda is in the pre-primary and the lower primary.
All right.
As a medium of instruction.
Well, anyway, anywhere in the world, any community that has a culture of a written tradition, because that is also important. Any culture in the world that has a written tradition has the first years of education in their own language. Finland, that speaks a language that is only spoken in Finland, teaches in Finnish, or Finn, if it's called Finn. So, for us also, as being one of those lucky situations, I would say, compared to other of our brothers and sisters on the continent, where we enjoy the situation being one state nation with one culture, with one language, and with a very rich cultural background, but maybe a deficit in the written part of our culture. Well, it would be very normal that we format our basement and our future, our children, in what is logic, the environment, the immediate environment. But like you say, and like that we also keep our minds open, because we are also in a particular situation from our near past, our history, is because we're one of those countries where everyone has been already diaspora. Everybody has lived outside Rwanda almost. It's only this generation that is now enjoying that they are full in Rwanda, but with parents that have touched in different cultures and different languages. And like you said, we are right in the middle between a francophone and an anglophone world, So we could enjoy that and develop and invest in that. But definitely education as such, whatever language it is, it needs to be consistent. And so that is the first thing. So education is one thing. But secondly, of course, I would advocate for those reasons that I just gave, why it necessarily needs to be in Kinyarwanda.
Do you think 3 years are enough?
Definitely. I mean, but what I think it has been the experience of the last 100 years, or at least 60, 70 years. Ever since I went to school, and I didn't go into, I didn't study in Kinyarwanda, but that was P1, P2, P3, that's where they put the basis of everything, And now, starting in P3, most of the time, that is where, in other countries, they top up, they take another language as a subject. And then when they are lucky, and now, by the way, Tanzania has made it, at least as the first African country, where from nursery to university now everything is in Swahili. So it is doable, because that's the deficit of this continent. This is the only continent that has this kind of deficit, is because we didn't invest in that written part of language.
Interesting. Matthew, you know, as a parent, of course, all of us probably here are, but you know, when you hear this, he mentioned something about consistency, which we'll probably get back on, but this policy itself, how do you interpret it?
I think the interesting place to start from is that, as Albert just mentioned, we all were kind of misguided in the beginning, that we thought this is an exclusivity for Kinyarwanda, for kids from pre-primary and lower primary, that they're not going to study any other language. Now, I want to make sure that that is already taken out of the board and kids can still be introduced to new languages in the process. But then...
But the fundamental language is Kinyarwanda.
Of instructions.
Okay.
Now, I am not against having a basic language that a child should actually learn through. Because when you look at Kinyarwanda in our society, it's very easy for you as a child. The word you learn in school, you will come back, the person at home will actually speak the same word, and the person in the neighborhood will speak the same word. It's a whole community speaking the same language. However, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, a child at this stage has the opportunity to learn as many languages as possible. So it is not that we are trying to kind of cushion them so that they are not disoriented or distracted. They can still learn Kinyarwanda and speak their Kinyarwanda. Albert, you mentioned it very well. We all had influences from all over the continent because we lived in different places. However, when I came to Rwanda, nobody taught me Kinyarwanda. By the time I got here, I already knew how to speak Kinyarwanda because Kinyarwanda is a cultural language to me. It is taught at home more than it is taught at school. So as far as education is concerned, and I will speak to Reb and the Ministry of Education, as far as education is concerned, we are trying to prepare, and I think this is a political statement, Rwanda's biggest asset is its people. In other words, we export people. We have people as the source of revenue and source of growth for the country. Now, so we need to kind of put that from the very foundation. Are we readying them to be able to kind of influence and be able to be sold elsewhere, to become practical people in a global world? So as we go into this policy, like the DG just mentioned, it's not a new policy. We all actually were misled that we thought it's something new, but the thing is, as we go into the policy, let's not be mistaken to lower impact on how these teachers in these primary schools are able to actually articulate other languages, because we are preparing kids for a global environment. We are not preparing them to stay in Rwanda. We are preparing them to go out. Yeah.
So,
no.
Who are we doing this?
No. We are confusing things. It's not about, when you teach in Kinyarwanda, it's not about teaching them Kinyarwanda. It's about formatting their world. It's about everything. It's about dimensions, height, speed, values, politics. It's about formatting. It's not, no, but let me be clear. Let me be clear. It's not teaching, you learned Kinyarwanda, but you were taught the world, the formatting of your personality and all that. That is what has to be consistent in one language. And you take the language that is obvious of your environment, of your culture, of everyone, your community. That is what you take. I mean, let me be clear. Israel was created today, as we know it, in 1948. And for 2,000 years, Jews hadn't spoken Hebrew. And they revamped it in 48, not just for pride. It's because of, they know they had been carrying that. But of course, they have a written background. So, and every country that we are looking up to is doing that in its own language. Japan, China, Korea, name them. So there must be a good reason. So that doesn't stop you. No, but that doesn't stop you to teach our children languages. You can teach them languages, and they're still P3, they're still young enough to grasp that. But what you are formatting, the fundamentals, the basics that you put there needs to be, and that needs to be consistent. But I would advocate for your own language. Don't go for another language. Don't live other people's lives.
So here's the question. When you mention the language of instruction, does it mean you're going to tell a kid that if you want to go to the bathroom, you go this way in Kinyarwanda, or if you're teaching them mathematics, you're going to actually teach them exclusively in Kinyarwanda?
Yeah, maybe that is also an area to be clarified. There is what we call subject, just like we have mathematics.
Yeah.
Mathematics is a subject. Now, how do you teach mathematics? In which language do you teach mathematics? You can teach mathematics in Kinyarwanda, in English, in Swahili, and so forth. And still, it remains mathematics. So what we are saying here is that Kinyarwanda now, as a medium of instruction, it means that all other subjects being taught through Kinyarwanda, that is for pre-primary and lower primary. However, as he mentions, we need also to understand when children are ready to be exposed to other languages. Because as my friend here at the right side is saying, again, it is important that we also embrace other languages. Even in the news you saw as, actually I drove from Nyamagabe coming here to the studio. Yeah. We're celebrating International Literacy Day, whereby actually the theme is around the importance of any other language throughout the education system, or even the success of an individual. So as actually we train our children, we need to make sure that they also become a global citizen in the future. So, however, the issue is now, when are children ready to learn in other languages? Just like when you have a child, when is the child ready to eat food, not being breastfed or being only consuming milk and so forth? That is actually according to the policy. You know, a policy is research-based. A policy is not something that you dream, then you put it on the ground. No, it is research-based. It is informed by other practices, but it builds on the needs of the nation. So according to the policy, and which even inform the curriculum which we are using now, the medium of instruction actually changes from P4. However, children have had exposure to English as a subject. That is why you have English for P1, P2, P3 as a subject, where students learn vocabularies. Because again, if you change abruptly from Kinyarwanda to English, students having never had any single concept or word or English, it will be very difficult for them to learn all other subjects in English if they have not had enough language, if you can call it. So that's why we are saying that according to the policy, it was found that our children, by the time they reach P4, that is when now they are ready to embark with English as a medium of instruction. You see? But however, they have had English as a subject on P1, P2, and P3. So I think now I was trying to clarify what we call a subject and a medium of instruction. So in other countries, of course, you can have French as a medium of instruction, you can have Arabic as a medium of instruction, you can have Kiswahili, and so forth. However, the subject differs from the medium of instruction. And what we are discussing here is, now, what is the medium of instruction? And when do we switch from Kinyarwanda as a medium of instruction to English as a medium of instruction? That arises with when students actually graduate from lower primary as they enter upper primary.
I want to guess, you know, when you finish primary 3, you're probably, not in my time, I think at that time. 8. Yes. Isn't that a little bit too late for someone to actually, because usually, you know, scientifically they say at the age of 7, that's when you can learn as many languages as possible.
So it is not too late.
Even 6, 5, so it gives you even the confidence, but actually, isn't it?
Even as a toddler, you start getting exposed to different languages. As a child, if your grandmother speaks Kinyarwanda and your mother speaks French and your father speaks English,
so what do you put the responsibility of parents here?
No, but that's a mixture, because what is really important here is how you fix your people, your community, through the education, and that goes through your own medium. And so for me, it is not. I mean, languages when you at that age, it's never too late. But if you start thinking about fixing your own stuff at a later age, you will have missed that point, and you will have people will exist. We will survive in this world.
What are we talking about here that you're trying to
it's you as why do, no but why do you think everybody's not switching into English? Why do you think people preserve their culture? Why do you think people preserve their language?
Is it about culture that we're talking about right here? Well, culture,
if it's not about culture, you might not understand what the magnitude of what is in culture, or what it takes. If you think it's guhamiriza no kuivuga, then you get it wrong.
No,
that is not culture.
It's about culture, but then
it's not just culture. It's you. It's you.
Exactly.
It's your identity.
Exactly. I don't agree with you that a child's identity, that my daughter's identity, is going to be created in school. That is a family responsibility before it becomes a school responsibility. No. So let's not mix up.
No. You are making a divide. Like so if there was a divide.
Now the question is, where is the role of parents in this whole thing?
And maybe before you answer that, DG, I want to also add another question. Yeah. The fact that we have had this whole social media uproar around this subject indicates that your research in 2009 that led to the policy was not as inclusive as it should have been, because it appears that people still do not understand why you even made the decision in the first place. And then
which decision?
I think we need to...
Which decision?
The decision in 2009 to make Kinyarwanda the language of instruction from pre-primary and lower primary, because
but it hasn't changed.
Debate around it,
yeah, but it hasn't changed.
That's 10 years ago.
Yeah, but it hasn't changed.
So which means we never knew. We never got involved in
and what has that to do with the research?
Yeah. No, we need to get to know where the research came from. So who did you talk to? Because these kids are our kids. Before they become anybody's kids, they are our kids. So before you make any decisions, we need to have been involved. Now, the uproar that we're seeing on social media indicates that we were never involved. But it doesn't show that we actually got to
But Guy,
let's first respond to where's the role of
just
parents?
like you can go to Parliament and say, you know, this law was passed, and then we as Rwandan...
Yeah, we were not, I mean...
So any policy actually...
I think if we said that would be right. Still, if that law came out and we said we are not involved, then that law is null and void.
Yeah.
But even how do you get there that they might not have been communicative enough? I agree with that. But to think that they did something in your back and like it was something, that has been actually the trash communication about it. Like if they were doing things that they didn't know or that they didn't really thought about or they didn't go to the extent of the research. Like what they are doing is nothing unique. This is a system in the world. No. Everywhere.
Anyways, let's first answer that question. Dr. Irene, help us.
But where have you been, man?
Gentlemen, I'll come back to you. Let's first give him some time to explain to us.
Sure.
Where's the role of parents in this whole?
I would start by saying that before I answer to that one, maybe going to back what he was asking. If you happen to be visiting our schools, especially government schools and government-aided schools, since that policy was adopted, go and check the teaching and learning materials, I mean, teacher's guide, student book, and so forth, all are in alignment with the guidance. Go and check the assessment. However, as I said, through the enforcement of this policy, through inspection, through campaign, through comprehensive assessment, that's now some private schools that have been not respecting this guidance are now saying, hey, but this is something that has been there for 10 years. Now, coming to your question again, I would say that the policy was disseminated. However, of course, it's like we are here at the RTV. Do you know what Isango Star and other television are talking about, or radio station? There are too many. So if something has passed, maybe if he was not informed, or if he was not involved, it does not mean that even when you go to research, you sample, isn't it? So, and If the sample is representative enough, it means that the findings can be expounded to the population size. So now coming to the question of the involvement of parents, of course, we should not have a kind of bridge saying that there is a difference between the family and the school, because again, the school is another home. If the school fails to be another home, that's where even becomes the challenge. Yeah. So you are self-quoted that it is important that as students come to school, they find themselves more like welcomed than even feeling like, you know, at the school it is challenging. I cannot find myself. It is another world. So as children come to school, it is important that they find like the school is a continuation of my life in the home. So that's why we are saying that actually parents are also educators. All the same teachers are or play the role of parents by the time students and their hand. So we are not actually saying we are divorcing the family and the school. No, they are intertwined, they intermarry. So they actually complement each other. That is why from even what he said, the written culture or the written part of the language is important, because what you will find more in the family is the verbal aspect of the language. But the written part or the technical part of the language is taught in the school.
From my personal experience, just to reconcile the things, and I think what I'm going to share is what most people do have as an experience. Your parents, that is your primary environment, of course. So it starts there. And the continuation, actually, it is in school. That means it's a continuation. Sure. And it helps when it is a continuation. But now, the school role is because people who are there, the main thing is they've went through their own education to be able to give what they are supposed to give. And from my own experience, the people who have really formatted me most after my parents, after my family, are my teachers. Definitely. And these are the ones of primary and secondary, because after that, everything is anonymous.
With an adult,
you know, no, but even the guys, you don't see them anymore. Like you really get together with your primary, and these are the people that will. So there is a good reason why they became that, is because they went themselves to a system to know how to transmit what they have to transmit. So there must be complementary, but that has nothing to do with our system here, that you should drop Kinyarwanda to go for a European language.
You can't drop Kinyarwanda, Albert.
There's no way you can
Kinyarwanda is part of us.
So the system that we have, if we do agree, is that up to P3, it's exclusively the medium of education is Kinyarwanda, isn't it?
Albert, I think there's something we are missing out here. Yeah. There's something we are missing out here. When you look at the evolution of the school ecosystem that we have in this country, when you look at the international schools, the private schools, and the public schools, what we have in primary
which are a minority, right?
No, but you see, when you look at who takes their kids to the international schools and what they are looking for in the international schools and the cost they go through to get these kids into the international schools, you look at what they are looking for.
Yeah, but it's not the language.
No. They are looking for the language as well as the rest that comes with it. Wait a second.
That's your assessment.
Then the second, the second,
that's your assessment.
The second layer we get to is a private school, which is trying to pick from some aspects within the international schools with the curriculum that we have locally to make it cost effective.
And that is wrong.
Parents who cannot have, but you see, the question here is, are you trying to dictate where I should or how I should raise my child? That's one question.
But when you open
a school, if I know what you respect, you say, I will abide with A, B, C, D, E, F. That's why you get accreditation.
So I have invitations, and the reason as to why many of those who can afford it take their children to international schools.
Let me tell you, most of the time, bourgeois people take their kids with bourgeois kids. You know, they're the same class. It's not about the language. It's the excuse is the quality, but it's because your bourgeois kids, you don't want to go. That is the real reason. That is the profound reason.
So in other words,
so it's but now what you
so there's
are
no
saying,
quality there.
What you are saying is deeper than that. Is that the quality of those teachers, the quality of the material that you in a public school should be at the same level as the private one, but it's not the language.
No, thank you for cutting me short there.
Actually,
Thank you for cutting me short there, because the next statement I was going to make to the DG was,
exactly.
So are we running away from international languages because we don't have teachers to teach them? That would be very critical.
For
the
sure.
second thing, exactly. So by the time they get to primary 3 or primary 4, will we have the teachers? Because that's 2009. Today is 2019.
Yes.
So if we didn't prepare the teachers, then we don't have the teachers.
We have
right
them.
now. And I have been to public schools.
Yes.
And
So we
have teachers.
we have teachers.
So,
Yes.
so we are
Who
not
can
running
teach
away
them?
from the quality of the teachers in primary schools.
Fantastic.
We have teachers.
So there is this statement.
And even our teacher training colleges, we have them who are following actually in the teacher training colleges, we have 4 options. We have early childhood and rural primary education. We have those who are doing sciences. We have those who are doing languages. And we have those who are doing now social sciences. So we don't have a shortage of teachers or feel like we don't have teachers to teach in English. No, we have them, a large pool.
Interesting. I was doing a research earlier today, and I read this article from the New Times, which I want to, but this specific paragraph where it says that various head teachers and parents who talked to the New Times expressed that teaching children in foreign languages, that is English and French, is better than Kinyarwanda, contending that school-going children can learn in Kinyarwanda while at home. I mean, it brings us back to what we are.
Who will teach them at home?
Their parents.
Their parents.
These are the
you are a parent. Are you now at home?
But
I mean, I'm not home, but when I get home,
But did you go as a parent?
How sure are we that
In the same
How sure are we
training as a
that your
teacher?
system is actually going to help our kids become more expressive, more...
why don't we make, I mean, here is again the question. Why don't we...
Why do teachers go to school to learn about education? Why do the teacher go?
Sure. It's like
Parents don't go to school to be parents.
Yeah.
So there must be a good reason why you give the teacher a task.
Albert, are you trying to say that we should leave the duty of parenting to the teachers because they go to
No,
school
you
to
don't
learn
get
teaching?
it. No, you don't get it.
Parents are not-
You
We're
don't
talking
get
about the
it.
language.
You don't get it. Parents, parents are parents.
Yes, sure.
Okay, they educate. They don't teach. Teachers go into a system to understand how to deal
certain subjects.
Good.
Not just certain subjects.
Yes, I had the doctor very well when he mentioned that these teachers in the teaching colleges have certain things they follow to be able to teach them.
Yes.
Non-so.
Yeah, that's why they go. That's why they go to school for that. Parents don't go to school.
But you see, the issue with culture, because when you start mentioning things with culture, the issue with culture, the issue with my native language, I don't think I'm going to learn from a school environment.
You don't know,
things,
because
my
maybe you
culture
don't-
is
you
supposed to
don't-
be
you
taught to me by my most valuable adult voice in my life, who is my parent.
Okay, that is your past of an oral tradition. You see, you don't come obviously from a written tradition, because in a written tradition, the school is part of the culture.
Definitely.
Of course.
It is.
Yes,
That is a narrow
that
aspect
is-
of the culture.
But
It does not take away the responsibility of the parent.
But no,
So don't-
but that's
don't
why I
try
say
to-
you keep culture only with the parents. Like culture isn't taught in schools. Of course, it is taught in schools. Of course, that's why. That's why. But
So let me engage an educationist here.
Yeah.
What do you think is the right time? When do you think is the right time to build confidence in a kid? Confidence in terms of expressing themselves.
At any time.
At any time.
Yeah, even when you take your 2 years daughter or son on his or her birthday, if he has the ability to talk, he talks, says, I thank everybody for being here and so forth. So at any age, depending on how the child is advancing,
Ethan, it's another world.
yeah.
You see, with your parents, the confidence and all that, that is what your parents also can help you. Teachers, they go to school to educate themselves. about a world that the parents don't have access to. You see, the passion of reading, that's a teacher that might be might have more impact than a parent. Of course, parents, exceptional parents sometimes, but you know, it's at school that the teacher will tell you about this figure, about this history, you know, and inside people, you know, or the students to also get a passion for that. And those passionate teachers who have been learning and keep doing their research all of the time, well, that is why you get in the school, you see? Now, on top of that, if you can even get that in your own language, that is a plus. If on top of that, people teach you languages and that you can also express what you know from your own stuff in other language, that is where exactly. So plus. this is like, but that is been formatted and start away from in the beginning, in the best scenarios, in your own languages. In a deficit scenario of Africa, you take other people's languages.
Interesting.
Good.
Well, I had a conversation. Sorry, you want to?
He's underlining actually that teaching is a profession.
Yeah.
Just like journalism is a profession.
That's true.
Engineering, medicine,
Definitely.
these are professions.
Definitely.
So let professionals actually do their profession. Of course, parents are educators, as he mentioned, and education starts from the family, but it expands in the school, where professionals now are actually inculcating all these other values that go beyond the oral traditions.
DG, I would want to ask you a question here, and I'd pose the same question to all of us here. So the question is, we've been implementing this policy for 10 years.
10 years.
Good.
And
is that so?
10 years, yes.
And today, the mention of the policy starts a whole emotional debate. Now, the question I want to ask you.
Is that return to the future?
No. Albert, the question I want to ask you, and you mentioned this very well, that as a teacher, the first thing that you do, how you acquire knowledge of the broader context of the world, is through the research that you do and everything. How much of this content do we have written in Kinyarwanda? In the last 10 years, how much of this have you been able to create? Because when I go to look for babies or kid books in libraries and everywhere, most of what I get that can actually excite my daughters is written either in French or in English. So in the last 10 years, how much of this content have you created that the teacher will be able to actually consult this content in Kinyarwanda? Because if you're reading it in Kinyarwanda and you're going to excite kids in Kinyarwanda, it's much easier than if you're going to read it in French and English, and you're going to try and bring it into another language. So how much of this kind of broad content have you been able to create in the last 10 years?
Good.
And that's a very big question if we are going to actually implement
It is
this
even a
policy.
good question. Yeah, not only big, but also very good question and insightful. Before you enter in the studio, I was chatting with my friend, telling him how much we have gone in inviting and citing our students even to write stories, good stories that would even inculcate the reading culture in our children. Just like you were mentioning, we need actually to have what students should read. In actual fact, increase the exposure to Kinyarwanda language. So we have done a lot, but also the journey is still long to go. From the schools, with the Andika Rwanda and other initiatives, something has been happening for the last, I think, 5 years now. If you visit our schools, we are going even to find like bookshelves in our schools. Beyond the teaching guide, beyond the student book, those story books in Kinyarwanda, they are there now. You can improvise any public or government school, even here in Kachiru. By tomorrow, you can pass and confirm. However, as we need to agree that our writers, especially those who write in Kinyarwanda, should do double efforts, and even our printing houses actually should do more to facilitate actually these writers as they submit the materials to be printed. You know, the cost that is associated with the printing, distribution. Even some of the parents do not have yet that habit. When you pass, for instance, when you leave your office, you pass to a supermarket, what do you buy? You buy some chocolates to the kids. Do you even remember that they should be buying textbooks or you buy some readers or storybooks. That is
I think there are parents who do that.
Is it a general practice? We are not yet there.
You might ask that. and then also,
as we produce,
on this one,
we should be having people
on this one, I'm at your side.
Good.
On this one, I'm at your side.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that is exactly the deficit. Because we are still, I have some of those debates on Twitter about, my problem that I have with Kinyarwanda today is the written part. Okay. And especially because people think that the written Kinyarwanda is their language. It is not, guys. Hey, if you listen to me, written Kinyarwanda was done by outsiders. They were the Bazungus.
Exactly.
They wanted to get you to read the Bible. And they had to administer you. You know, they had to manage you. So they made a light Kinyarwanda a basic Kinyarwanda. You see? Now,
that's a very good question, because I really want to ask him if they were really involved in the, the changing of the written Kinyarwanda.
No, but that's not their role. Yeah. There is an academy. And the academy,
but they should be involved.
No. Let me tell you. Let me explain why. Let me explain.
That is why even we are using the current written format in our textbook.
You're using the current one.
Yes.
But you see that at some point recently was being criticized.
No. You see, first of all, they also have an issue in communication. But if I went through, because I went through, it's not what they say about the Vuningoma stuff. It's not true, actually. I went through the things. And what they did, it's an ongoing debate that has been there ever since the 60s. There has been different people debating on fine-tuning what was fixed in the 1940s. And since the 60s, there have been debates, Coupe, Kamanzi, blah, 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 trying an effort even to create a dictionary, you see. So all of this shows you that somehow we need, but that's not their part. Because why you have an academy, it's exactly to keep doing that, to fine-tune, so that they have a tool that they can give to these guys. These guys are the enforcers. Yeah. They go it down. And if it works, that is another part that I don't agree with him, is that writing and all of that, that is part of a creative industry. Creative industry doesn't come because you tell people, write.
Do that.
No, it will come because you get it.
Exactly.
You
because
see?
you created the conducive environment for creativity.
So people who can talk needs also to find a way to make it, to write it. Well. And we haven't switched into that. So as much as we have an aspiration or an ambition to teach everything in Kinyarwanda, but if we don't have the written material, we have
gentlemen, Athan, allow me to just mention one thing. I see, Albert, the debate you started of how we were trying to work on Kinyarwanda from a very long time is a story that I knew even as a child.
Exactly.
The confusion between Kabgai written with the BG and the Kabgai written with the BW.
And Amasayo, Nogusura.
Exactly.
You see,
the question I want to ask the DG, which is related to what you were mentioning, is related to why we have been struggling to implement the policy since 2009. In 2010, I think, not 2010, it was 2016, when you reduced the production of materials, the creation of materials, of reading materials by private entities in this country. So in other words, there were these whole publishers that you cut out of the loop with the responsibility going to REB and an extension of REB. Now, that already reduces the amount of written content that we have in the system. Because we already had some people starting up, creating content in Kinyarwanda, but then from your own perspective, I don't know what led to that, you decided to cut out this creative industry somehow. I'm not trying to judge you, but I'm putting it across to you.
Yeah,
good question.
I would attempt that question. First of all, what we call in-house textbook production started in the year 2018, not the year 2016. Okay. Again, what Rwanda Educational Board produces is a teacher guide and a student book. We don't write storybook. We don't write dictionaries. We still procure or get other what we call learning resources. So there was actually good reason for Rwanda Education Board to enter in the process because actually first there were what we can call loopholes in the existing textbooks, be it in the process on the distribution. Two, Rwanda Education Board had actually also to own fully the content. You know, when you produce like 1 million copies today, and the next year, the enrollments will always grow. So it means that we always run after Nathan, who is the author of the book. Can you produce another 500 copies? So again, as we embrace the ICT in education policy, we need actually the copyright of these materials so that we can create now a digital format of the textbooks. So you see, there is no how actually you can say, we are doing this, however, there is another player for whom we need to run after as we are going to do this. So the guidance has been that, and the decision that we fully own the production, distribution, and even the conversion of the print into the soft or the digital format of the textbook, so that actually we have all of this in our hands. We have actually full control of the content. You might have had actually even some of the publishers who actually whose textbooks were poor quality or even the content was not in line with what was desired initially. So all of these malpractices, all these loopholes, all these mistakes actually had, which took place in the past, there was need actually to say, no, enough is enough. Let them do storybooks, let them do other running materials, but when it comes to the core text, which is the student book and the teacher guide, being the full hand of the Rwanda.
Interesting. No, Matthew, you have the book. Here's the thing. Not your point down. We're going for a very short break because it's really heating up here in the studio. Let's go for a short break. When we come back, we'll take some of your comments and your opinions there on Twitter. Remember, the hashtag is InFocusRW, and I will not allow the next question until we come back from this very short break. Interesting. Many comments right there. And thank you so much for joining us here through your phones. Now, let me put this aside. And I want to, allow the people behind the screens to share with us some of the comments right there. Let's begin it off. Let's see if we have some of the comments. But before we get there, we probably have a technical issue right there. But
while they're working on it, I would want to extend the conversation a bit on, because Doctor, before we went for the break, we were tackling the issue in terms of creating more content in Kinyarwanda. Sure. And you explained the reasons behind your involvement into the process, because maybe the content was not as good as it's supposed to be. But you understand. But
just to make sure, just to make sure that we are on the same page, what they took in their hands it's about the curriculum, right? It's when it's the textbook that needs to be owned by them and controlled by them. Whatever is storybooks and all that.
But you see, Albert, the question that I wanted to ask here is, the creative industry flourishes in the economy. It has to have some sort of economic backing.
Yeah, but they're not controlling that part.
The thing is, but you already mentioned yourself, you have very few people in this market that will pass somewhere and just pick a book that is not part of the textbooks that are within the
consumer side.
Now, that's on the consumer side. But you see, if you're going to nurture the creative industry as the government, if you know the need that you have, because it's a need, it's not just something you wish for.
Governments don't nurture creative industries.
You need to create the environment. They are the biggest consumer in this economy.
No, but of course,
They're the only market almost in this economy.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
So you need to be able to give these guys a stepping stone. Make sure that their work is quality, but support them to kind of grow into the publishing industry, because you're the only market that is available. So if you don't give them the business, if there's no business for them,
you should set the trend in consuming Kinyarwanda creative industry. You should set the trend. It's the government.
Yeah, in actual fact, I think that
I agree.
We are doing two things, and we remain in the partnership with them. However, the two things I want to mention is that first of all, we actually approve the textbooks or the storybooks or any other resource that you want to sell to schools. in terms of quality assurance, so because it goes through what we call textbook approval committee. Secondly, we create the environment which we are talking about. Even today in Nyamagabe, if you had the chance to talk to people who were in the stadium, there was big tent for exhibition of different products, storybooks and so forth. So all these are opportunities that we are creating to make sure that actually the publishing industry meet the clients or the parents or other people who are actually interested to consume the content.
But the fuel is going to be you, the government. That's the fuel that's going to finance the economy in the beginning. If you're going to grow that creative side of writing in Kinyarwanda, you will have to understand and agree that you will have to fuel the process. Like just what happened after 1990 for genocide here. Like there was no economy working. The government had to kind of invest in private industry to kind of get the wheel rolling. So you need to get the wheel rolling in that particular industry. Otherwise, they will not create anything for you because they will not have, they will not have a financial imperative to do so.
That's, the technical issue has been sorted. Let's read through.
The size of the counter.
Albert, share with us some of those comments. Let's look at them. Freddy Goroba Mutevi. For an African who is not a language teacher, is it necessary to master foreign languages or is it enough merely to speak and write those they need to learn? And would speaking and writing one of the native languages will prevent anyone from learning to speak and write another well? Quite, you know, very good questions over there from Goroba. Do you want to take
no. But what he's saying is what I'm saying. Is the fact that why is investing in your own language be an obstacle now to get on top of that foreign languages? It should not be. But it comes back to the quality of the education.
Are you able to provide that quality basic language?
So that is something that indeed came up because I guess that was in the beginning of the show. But yes, the problem is now the content.
Exactly.
How much do we have in our own language, and how much, like he was asking, does government support the fact that we need it? And so you need to create a demand.
The pull for it.
Yeah. So, but it's not exactly like the way you were.
I think I made
you were mixing things because you see, it's like the creative industry. It's about people who create. So, what is their drive? They need to have a drive. But like you say, at the other side of the counter, they need to be somehow
of that drive.
Yes.
Because if there is no economy, then the drive will not last.
But you see, since the beginning, since now that we have media, more than just the state radio and the state TV, now we do have stars. How much do they sell? You see, at least they have the platforms, but how much do they sell? So you cannot say now tell the government that the government should buy all of them just to support the creative industry. It's the same thing. Now you have, I've seen many people also in the street saying, "Hey, I wrote a book and all that." Then I support, I buy, and then I start reading and I say, "Oh my God." But who edited this? You see, like, how is this even written and all that? You know, so
we have many comments. We have many comments. Yeah. I'll ask them to probably get us 3 or 4 straight away. We'll read them and probably take the questions as this is Fitu Michiza Yosani. Ethan Tashobia, please kindly ask if those guests have a kid in the schools that Reb Rwanda wants to. I think the good question is here, does this apply to all schools, private, public schools, this policy?
In actual fact, we say the private schools that use government or national curriculum. Yeah. Yes.
It is applied. That one has been answered. Next comment should be coming in from Likuze Damasen. It is very essential to use mother tongue as a medium of instruction for kids. This helps them to master their language and it will help them to easily learn basic science. It will also help them to effectively learn foreign languages. Thank you so much, Damasen. Our next comment, I think it's next comment, please. Let's see if we have one of the comments. This one is coming from Dr. Isaac Munyakazi, who is, of course, the State Minister for secondary, State Minister and the Minister of Education in charge of primary and secondary. He says, remember, language policy has not been changed. Our curriculum values match all officials' languages, but it can't ignore Kinyarwanda, our mother language. Ururimi rwacu rugomba kwigishwa no gukomeza kuturanga. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for that comment. Do we have another one? Yes, we have Faith Keza, who says, can the ministry release a policy document on the changes? He says the New Times article left a lot unanswered, and this doesn't lead to productive discourse. What is the purpose of the changes? What is the transition plan? And how does this fit into a long-term plan?
But there was no change. This is what misled people.
Exactly.
Yeah, so
no, kindly bring that comment back if you can. And what is the transition plan?
But there is no change.
There is no change.
This has been going on for 10 years.
Okay, so now the question is,
the question
how
goes
does
back
this,
to what we were discussing.
So how does this fit into a long-term education system?
But Ethan,
Honourable Minister,
I know, but there was no change.
Let's respond to Deji. How does this fit into a long-term education system? I think this is a very pertinent question.
But Ethan, there was no change. Yeah. This has been the policy effort. So you want to ask 10 years later,
Albert,
what is the strategy?
Albert, the question goes back to where we were, that yes, the policy was enacted 10 years ago, but so just the mention of it online by the Ministry of Education recently started this whole uproar. Now the question is, back then, when we had the policy, did we do the implementation strategy for the policy? Did we do the transition that she was talking about? Because if we had done in 2009, then perhaps by 2019, 10 years later, we would have transitioned into this process. So the question still is a valid question.
But I asked you, that if you have been visiting our schools, especially government and government aided, did you discover that the policy was not being implemented?
So the focus was on just the public schools.
Private schools are, some private schools, again, so that I can be quoted properly, some private schools have not been adhering or embracing 100% the policy. But when you go to government or government-aided school, the policy is 100% being respected 10 years ago. So it is not something new.
And you know the question you're going to get, and I'm sure it's going to come on Twitter just in a few minutes. The question is going to be, so in your assessment, did you find these public schools, government-aided schools, doing better than the private schools in the last 10 years? The question
since you've answered it, you've asked it. Let's take it on.
So when you look at the assessments, are they doing better in the last 10 years than the private schools that are not going through the policy? Because I would give you a very good...
Would your assessment only be restricted to the language?
No, but you see now the question because they are following the policy, and these others are not following it. You have a control.
Yes, but if this would be not a fair assessment, and not even because once you assess, there are so many other parameters that needs to be considered. Because essentially, from the beginning, what we have said, I don't believe it's the language. I believe it's the whole system. It's what are the means? What are your classrooms like? What are your teachers? It's ecosystem. Exactly.
Yes,
that is where.
But that would be a very good litmus test for the policy, because 10 years later we can be able to judge and see.
Gentlemen, gentlemen, my director tells me we're out of time. I'm giving you probably 2 minutes.
If we follow the results that we raise at the national level, maybe be it P6, senior 3 or senior 6, you have a good record of government schools doing very well, including 9 and 12 years basic education schools. However, the point he was raising is very important. What makes the student performance is not actually one factor. There are a good number of factors which we call the inputs in the educational system, and how they are brought together to lead into the learning outcomes. So you cannot just be anchored on one aspect and say, this is the one which is triggering the whole process.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure.
Dr. Irene, the Ambassador Director General of Rwanda Education Board, Albert Rudatsimburwa, who is a journalist, a creative artist, Matthew Wahiji, who is a communications consultant. And thank you so much, guys. We cannot exhaust this topic, clearly. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we could not read all your comments, but guess. The ministry is watching, is reading. Of course, the implementers here, Rwanda Education Board, they're following. So make sure you keep them coming, and then we'll see where this is going to lead us. Thank you so much for watching, and from me and the entire team that has helped me to put this together, thank you so much, and have a good night. I'm Ethan Tashavia.